A 12-person jury has now been finalized in the Manhattan hush money trial against President Donald Trump. Alternate jurors also chosen today as that process continued. Trump attorney Alina Habba says that the jury selection process has been an uphill battle thanks to the demographic of the jury pool in deep blue Manhattan, which she calls intentional. She also had this grim assessment of the situation. Listen.
Do you think Donald J. Trump will be able to get a fair trial?
No chance. There's no chance of a fair trial here. Remember, just because it's a jury doesn't mean that the judge can't sway them to go one way or another or make things difficult so that jury selection is impossible.
No chance. None. Join me live now to discuss this, constitutional law and litigation expert and running for the U.S. Senate in the state of Virginia, Jonathan Emord. Jonathan, nice to see you today.
Good to see you.
Let's start with this case, then we'll talk about your run for the U.S. Senate there in Virginia. But look, if they can get a couple of jurors out of Long Island or the Bronx or Brooklyn, anywhere but Manhattan, he might have a shot at this. But what do you say about no chance at all? I think there might be some chance, but it's slim, isn't it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say no chance at all. Of course, there's always a possibility, but it is extremely biased against him, I'm sure. And the whole case is ridiculous. So on the law, it really doesn't stand up. And why they would bring such a case against him, it can only be a political motivation. Alvin Bragg is clearly operating as a Democrat operative when he brings this thing.
Clearly. I mean, Bragg had passed on this case himself previously. The federal government passed on it altogether as well. Look, the statute of limitations ran on the misdemeanors and the felonies. Then they kind of merged the cases. Jonathan Turley calls this a Frankenstein case. It's stuck in my head because I think that's it. They stitched this together with that. They jumpstart it and push it forward. And like a robot, it kind of marches forward. But it is a Frankenstein case, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a late filed misdemeanor but business records case that really wouldn't amount to much of anything at all. They never would have brought it. But now they've transformed it into a felony case with 34 counts. It's just ridiculous. It's like a hydra with a million legs to it. It doesn't make any sense at all. And it is late filed. It is way past the statute of limitations. And it
so
also,
how it's not just dismissed out of hand is beyond me. But it's interesting because this wouldn't have been brought up against any other defendant. That it just wouldn't have been, would it?
No, and it's really a dangerous thing. People don't realize that when you have a case like this, even if they don't reach a verdict against them, just the mere fact that it has been brought and has been tolerated by a court lays a precedential foundation that others can exploit. This is an abuse of due process, really, and it's a gross violation of Donald Trump's rights. I mean, they're interfering with the 2024 election, and that's their intention. They want to keep them holed up there. And I don't I can't imagine that they would ever, as you point out, ever bring this against any other president of the United States. It just wouldn't happen.
Let me ask you now about the state of affairs in Virginia. Glenn Youngkin has proven himself to be a very able governor there. He seems to have done well, although the state house and Senate remain at odds with him. That's too bad. But it looks like they're trying to rig it even more, the Democrats in the state of Virginia. What does that mean for you? You're running for statewide office. They're trying to jockey around in some of the districts and so forth from what I read. But what does it mean for you for statewide office? Who are you running against? Tell me why you decided to do it.
Well, I'm running against Tim Kaine, who's Hillary Clinton's former running mate, as you'll remember, who's also the former head of the DNC. And he's really a part of a machine, a Democrat machine. He's in the leadership, and he votes about 94% of the time with Bernie Sanders. So he represents himself as a moderate in Virginia, but he's really a radical leftist. And I see all across Virginia, having traveled for the last year, meeting people almost every single day, with the exception of Sunday. I see a major shift happening, Stephen, in Virginia. We're looking at people who are fed up, whose lives are adversely affected by inflation, by the open border situation, by crime running rampant, and also by this climate change agenda that's destroying the fossil fuel backbone of the American economy and forcing them into the business of buying unaffordable EV cars. I mean, you just couldn't make this stuff up. It's so far left and so crazy. And the people in Virginia even in Northern Virginia, are starting to peel away from the Democrat Party in major numbers.
Well, I wish you well. Obviously, the reelection rate of seated U.S. senators, sitting U.S. senators, is about 90% or better. But there are several seats that are competitive this year for the very reasons you mentioned. I know we're going to see Maryland turn into a Republican seat, if only marginally, but the same in West Virginia. You can see the same thing happen in Ohio and Montana and Michigan and maybe Virginia. Jonathan, thank you for being here. I wish you well in that race.
Thank you so much. And if people want to reach me, they can go to emordforva.com. And of course, if they want to donate to help defeat Tim Kaine, that's the place to go. Thank you so much, Steve.
Emord for Virginia. Thank you, sir.